Hi, I'm Corinne Corser, and I welcome you to Cycles of Healing Souls. I am French, as you can recognize by my accent, and I would ask you to bear with me if my English is not correct sometimes. I practice energy healing and I consider myself a student of the universe. You can find more about me on my website and my blog. The goal of this channel, Cycles of Healing Souls, is to study metaphysics, or what one could call studying the universe, as a means for healing and developing understanding. So, in order to do so, I've considered two main teachings, although there are many others that we will use along the way. The first one is through the teachings offered by Gautama Buddha more than 2600 years ago. The second one is through the Law of One, the Raw Material, a series of books channeled by LNL Research in 1984, books that you can find for free on their website. So in this attempt to study the universe and clear the windows of our perception, I have asked the help of someone who has been a great teacher to me, and whose view is a blend of the Buddha's teachings and of the raw material, Dr. Scott Mandelker. Scott was born on April 22, 1962 in New York City. After high school, he spent several years in US and Asian temples doing formal training. Scott earned a BA in Buddhist Studies from Naropa Institute in Boulder, Colorado in 1987. After receiving an MA in counseling in 1990, he began a private practice in spiritual counseling, which he still maintains as of today through Skype wherever his travels bring him to. In 1992, he completed his doctorate in East-West Psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies, CIIS, in San Francisco, from which his first book came from, which the title is From Elsewhere. Very great book. If you haven't read it, I suggest it. He has published over a dozen essays on metaphysics, Eastern religion, and the spiritual meaning of ET contact, and the UFO presence, which you can find on his website for free. He's also the author of Universal Vision, very interesting book, very deep, and of book 3, Selected Essays, as deep as the second one, very interesting, but hard to really get on all the material inside. And so that later book is also available for free on his website. His view combines Western psychology, Eastern religions, Zen and Thai Theravada traditions, and the raw material. So Scott, thank you for coming and being willing to answer many questions. Thank you. So, thank you so much for coming to answer many questions.
You're welcome.
Scott. So I was thinking about starting with, some question I have personally about energy. So sometimes a lot of people, Qigong master and Tai Chi people and people in the energy, they use many terms to explain the same thing. So I would like to have your view on what do you think energy is?
Okay. When Ra talks about the process of cosmogenesis, they talk about basically 3 primary laws of creation. So there's the law of free will, the law of love, the law of light. This corresponds to every primary trinity in religion. Any religion that has a triad trinity, 3-pointed deity, like Hinduism, Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, or Christianity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. These come from the primary trinity or triad of the three laws. These three laws are basically the process by which the non-manifest one infinite creator, the one infinite creator being all that is, existed before any Big Bang. Big Bang means manifestation of creation, which are galaxies and suns and planets and octaves, seven-dimensional octaves. Before all that happened, there is a threefold, it's simultaneous, but it can be, everything, all is one means there's nothing to talk about. There's no differentiation. But in discussion of creation, we take what's called relative view. Buddhism, there's absolute view and relative view. So any discussion of principles of creation and cosmogenesis is all relative view, because absolute view is all is one, and then ultimately all is as it is, which cannot be described by concept. Concept is dualistic. There's light and dark, there's dual and unity, there's clear and confused. All concept is primarily dualistic, therefore relative. To talk about original principle or before creation, or the process by which the infinite being made a creation, this is absolute view, but we can't really talk about it in words, but we're trying, so there's some distortion. So when we say there's the original trinity or triad of the three laws, it's really one that can be seen as a three. It's really an instantaneous process, an instantaneous manifestation that can be seen in a linear way. Right? It's a unified existence that can be divided by time and space. Time meaning 1, 2, 3, the three phases, the first and then the second and then the third law, manifesting light. That understanding of time is just a breakdown, is just a relativization or a way of explaining the ineffable. So out of the one came the three. Before the one was the infinite, which is unable to be described in words. So to understand what energy is, we have to understand what light is. To understand what light is, we have to understand the three laws. To understand the three laws, we have to understand the process by which the infinite becomes manifest in form. So the one infinite creator, before the Big Bang, before the three laws, Ross said, discerned a concept, meaning had a concept in mind. The concept was called finity, non-infinity, limitation, apparent separation, distinction, or even the possibility of the experience of not being itself. The creator, which is all there is, in form, under a veil or with limited consciousness, not knowing what it is. All of that is the result of the exploration of finity, limitation. So the creator discerned a concept. The concept was finity, the possibility of being what it is not, or believing it is what it is not. The possibility of confusion. That possibility that the infinite can appear as the finite and can know itself or imagine itself as finite, that is the infinite experiencing itself as the opposite of what it is. It's experiencing itself as finite and limited, while it's infinite and unlimited. So that potential is itself the law of free will. The root of our experience of free will and the capacity to choose is the Creator's discerning of the concept of finity, which means the possibility of what is experiencing itself not as itself, experiencing itself as limitation or finity. And so the law of free will is called the law of confusion. The law of confusion means the reality that what we think we are is not really what we are. All there is the one infinite creator. So we are the one infinite creator. All that is the one infinite creator. That's why it's called one infinite. It's one, meaning all there is that one being. It's infinite means that every experience of limitation or finity is an illusion, or is not a fundamental reality. It's just the result of limited perception. So the law of free will is the first of the three laws, and that itself is the potential, or the thought, the manifestation of the potential of experiencing finity, limitation. So the creator discerns the concept finity. Oh, I could be what I am not. I, the infinite one, could experience myself as a finite many. I, the infinite one, can experience myself as finite manyness, multiplicity, many, limited manyness, or multiplicity, diversity, each of which is limited. That is the potential of the result of the creator, the infinite, discerning the concept of finity. That itself is the law of free will, which is confusion, which is the freedom ultimately to choose and do whatever you want. That means that all of creation is the result of an experience of the one infinite imagining itself to be what it is not, imagining itself to be limited and many when it is unlimited and one. Now, if we think of a linear process, you can say that law of free will gave rise to the law of light, then gave rise to the law of love, then gave rise to the law of light. So we can think of the three laws as a linear process, but it really isn't. We can think of it as a three, but it's really a one. If we think of it as sequence, we can say that the experience of that potential of the one infinite experiencing itself as the many limited, the willingness to allow itself to experience that is infinite love. That's the law of love. The law of love is understood as the enabling principle, the principle that allows the infinite to have this experience of manyness, limited manyness. That's the infinite love of the one infinite creator for itself. You can say God loves you. You are God. Nityananda said, everyone is God. Of course, everyone is God. That's what one infinite means. One infinite means there's only one of us here. Neil Donald Walsh said that. There's only one of us here. Right. All is the one infinite, you know. And so in Hinduism, there's a saying, when the knower and the known and the means to knowledge are one, there is Brahman. Brahman meaning the supreme Godhead, infinite being. Meaning, we can experience supreme Godhead when there's a unification in our experience of the normal split perceptions of self, I'm the knower, other is the object or the known, and then I have a body and a mind, so I'm using that as a means to knowledge. There's a me, there's my ability to know and think, there's the you or the other, the known. That seems to be a threefold, but it's really a onefold, meaning it's our perception that gives us the idea, knower, known, object, or means to knowledge. That belief, the understanding that there's a knower and a known and a means to knowledge. So there's a subject, there's an object, and there's a means of perception. That set of concepts is the result of limited perception. In the statement, meaning when those three are one, there is Brahman, means that when there is no more limited perception, those three are seen as one. Self and other are one, and the means to knowledge or body and mind are one. All is one. So that's God consciousness, the consciousness that's approaching the one infinite creator. So any kind of threefold or any kind of sense of limitation or our experience of manyness and limitation is the result of our perception. Likewise, even this discussion of the three laws being three is the result of our limited perception. To call the law of love a separate law than the law of free will is also a mistake even. You can actually say there are only two laws. There's the law of free will love, or loving free will, love-based will, and the law of light, which is energy, which is vibration. So if we think of it as a three, the awareness of the possibility of finity or limitation, the awareness that the creator could experience itself as not what it is, which is just part of its potential, infinite potential for experience. That awareness is the law of free will, self-granting freedom to experience all things, all forms of perception. That freedom or free willing, capacity for will that is 360 degrees, unlimited, that is an expression of the infinite love of the Creator too. Meaning it's infinite love that is the basis for the granting of the Creator for itself, of itself, to have the freedom to experience all things, including what it is not, which is actually what all creation is. It's a experiencing of limitation or form. So then you have the law of free will that is based in infinite love, giving rise to the law of light, the third law. The law of light is the Big Bang. It is the natural result of the interplay of infinite will and infinite love. Infinite will in freedom and infinite love gives rise naturally to light. Light is energy. So Ra said, the nature of all energy is light. So what we call energy, which is the same as vibration, is light. So energy, which is interconvertible with matter, E equals mc squared. So energy matter is ultimately a form of light. Light is ultimately vibration. All that is vibratory also has sound. And so Om, as the original sound, is an idea that the Creator, the one infinite Creator, is a vibratory creative process. Creation is a vibratory creative unfolding. Light is vibratory and thus audible, and thus it has a sound. So the law of light is basically the origin of energy. And Ra said, the origin, so the nature of energy is light. The origin of light is the action of free will upon love. Now you can say the action of free will upon love, the first principle, law of free will, the second principle, the law of love. You can say that it's the law of free will acting upon love. However, the basis of that free will is infinite love. So it's not exactly, it doesn't have to be split into subject, object, or doer, receiver, the action of free will acting upon infinite love. You can say that. You can also say that the infinite love will of the free, the infinite love free will of the one infinite Creator gave rise naturally to light.
So
and so if you're saying what energy is, we say energy is light, therefore it's vibratory, and it's a manifestation directly of infinite love will.
So if we see the Creator as an infinite stream that went from one point, even though it's infinite, so that went from one point to another, the feeling and perception of energy, light, will be being at the end, or somewhere at the end, compared to the beginning of the free will of the Creator manifesting. It will be, I guess, in time and space, it will be in second or third process instead of being at the start.
Well, again, if we're looking at this as a linear process or sequence, we can identify first, second, third. However, that's that perception of linearity or sequence, causality, is itself a limited view. All is one means that there is no temporal distinction of past, present, future. There is no time. Even higher self doesn't experience time in the same way we do. Higher self does experience time, but the one infinite Creator is entirely free, can experience absolute freedom from linearity. So you can say that, yes, sure, if we want to look at it as a sequence, the infinite, the Creator discerning the concept of the potential of finity or limitation, appearing or experiencing itself as not what it is. That is an infinite, that itself is a provision of infinite free will, because it's an expression of the will to experience all things. Unlimited will is the will to experience totality, which is not only what is, but also what is not. That then interplays with the infinite love or infinite permissibility, permission giving, permission granting. The Om Mani stone in Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, that mantra, the Mani is sometimes seen as a wish-fulfilling gem, meaning you rub your stone and it grants you whatever wish you want. The Creator is a Mani stone, Mani, M-A-N-I. The Creator is a precious, wish-fulfilling stone, or jewel, you can say, because all that can be is allowed to be. All that you wish, you are allowed to experience, if you wish. You can say then that those two, or that infinite love provision with the experience of an infinite will that has no limit to its capacity to experience or to act, that will upon love gave rise to light. You can say that that's a sequence, but it's actually simultaneous. I'm not sure if that answers your question, because
it's
that's sort of repeating what I said before, but please re-query for clarification.
Well, actually, I was speaking about the term consciousness. Lots of people talk about consciousness.
Now we get to that.
Where would you place consciousness? I know we are talking about linearity, and it's not the truth, but that's the way my mind conceives it, because
sure, everybody does.
So where would you place the concept, this idea of consciousness?
Consciousness, yeah. Consciousness is actually a form of light. Consciousness equals sentience. Sentience is reactivity, the capacity, the living quality of being influenceable, being receptive, transmissive. The capacity of light to receive and transmit is its receptivity, and that's actually a form of consciousness. So in Buddhism, there's something called the 5 skandhas, the 5 heaps. The 5 skandhas are the constituents of what Ra calls mind, body, spirit complex. And they're basically the totality of what we call ego or self. In Buddhism, there is no solid self or ego. Ra says also there is no ego. So both Ra and Buddha agree that there isn't a separate solid self. What we take to be the separate solid self are the 5 skandhas interplay over time as a flow, a stream. The 5 skandhas are form, feeling, perception, volitional compounds or volitional formations, which are sometimes called thought, and image and imagination and memory and all the mental constructs, including intuition, and then consciousness. So form, feeling, which is sensation in the body. Perception is the means to knowing, the means to experiencing, which is considered a function of mind. And then volitional formations or compounds, which are thoughts, basically, and feelings, what we call thought, feeling, concepts, discriminative functions of the intellect, of the mind, and then consciousness. Those 5 skandhas are called, we identify as a self, but there really is no self to be found there. The 5th skandha, consciousness, the Buddha said, even consciousness is born of ignorance. Consciousness is born of ignorance means that the origin of that function of mind, as well as the belief that it's a solid reality, right? If there's a function, but we're naming it consciousness, just like we are something, we are as we are, I am that I am, and we call it mind, body, spirit complex. Or people without wisdom say, oh, I'm a self, I'm an ego, I have a strong ego, I have a weak ego. So that's a distorted perception of a sense of self in the skandhas. The skandhas themselves, including consciousness, are also the products of distorted perception, meaning at a higher level of, like in trance, in jhana, in the higher states of meditation, the naming activity of mind goes away. When the naming activity of mind goes away, one doesn't actually consider that even consciousness is a substantial entity, right, or a function of mind, meaning all is one. Back to all is one. All is one means you can't make a distinction between consciousness and light. However, in limited perception, we can make a distinction between energy and consciousness. We can make a distinction between consciousness and volitional compounds, or the 5 skandhas as being 5, not 1, or not infinite. We call them 5 skandhas. That's a division of the unified creation or unified energy consciousness into 5 streams, 5 functions of mind, or 5 functions or 5 different entities. There's form and body, and then there's the functions of experiencing body and mind, which are perception and sensation and mental constructs and consciousness. All of that is basically body-mind. Now, again, consciousness is born of ignorance means when there's no ignorance, when the naming activity is finished in mind, what we call consciousness is no longer seen as a distinct function of mind. Now that's a higher answer than your question, meaning your question is already in the relative world, relative view. How do we understand the distinction between energy and consciousness? I just want to say, from the relative view, to the extent that we have an etheric body, that's one of the 7 energy bodies. The etheric body is associated with higher self or 6th chakra. That's that Ra calls that the form maker body. form maker. It makes a body. It makes a physical body. It makes an astral body. The condition of the etheric body is the result of mind, or the summation of mind conditions that then establish our energy field, which then makes our body, right? So heavy distortion in mind means a sick body. Usually people are sick because of distortions in mind. Purification of distortions in mind, taken to its ultimate, means the person's a Buddha or an avatar, Buddha, Gautama, or Nityananda. They can make their body whatever they want it to be, because their consciousness is free from distortion and illusion, and therefore can reform bodies according to a purified or perfected etheric body. So we can understand that all vibration is both light and consciousness. So the law of light is the law of the manifestation of vibration, or all that is in a manifestation, all form, all body, all 7 dimensions, all beings in 7 dimensions, all galaxies, all of that is a manifestation of the law of light. Okay? And that's vibration. All of that vibration is sentient, or conscious, or capable of reception, transmission, or capable of being sensitive, has the function light, being sensitive to light. Light's the self-sensitivity of light or energy to itself, because there's only light, there's only energy, right? That's all you've got. All you've got is vibration. Once you've made your first Big Bang. After your Big Bang, all you've got is vibration, which is called octaves and planets and material and non-material. All of that light is sentient. It's vibratory. It's sentient. Its sentience is its capacity to receive and transmit, or its capacity to be sensitive to itself, to the environment, to the ocean of light. All is one means it is one body of sentient light, which is energy consciousness. So when we talk about self-healing, we can talk about the energy approach and the consciousness approach. The energy approach then is like working on the chakras, or energy work. The consciousness approach includes psychology and meditation, working through distortion leavings of mind. So the entirety of the created universe, being light, based in infinite love, free will, being vibratory, is self-sentient, is sentient or sensitive, influenceable, receptive, transmissive to itself, which is the ocean of light or vibration. So consciousness is the sentient quality of light, and light is the energetic, is the vibratory function of energy. So the origin of the nature of energy is light. That light is vibratory. That vibratory quality itself is sentience. Sentience is vibration. The vibratory quality of light is sentience, is consciousness. It's the vibratory quality of light that is consciousness ultimately, or the consciousness of the infinite field of light. When we talk about human consciousness, we're talking about one distinct function of the unified mind-body-spirit complex. It's a little different. But essentially, it's the vibratory nature of light is its sentience, or is its consciousness.
So you presented these 5 skandhas, and in the 5 skandhas you talked about thoughts at some point, and then consciousness.
Right.
So does that mean that consciousness and thoughts should be differentiated?
See, again, Buddhism, in Zen Buddhism, there's an understanding that all talk is relative view. If you want relative view, you can split a hair as many times as you want. You can split creation into an octave, into galaxies, into body, mind, spirit complexes and dimensions and all of that. If we want to split the I am that I am into the constituents of the evolving mind, body, spirit complex, we say five, the five skandhas. In that case, consciousness is a function of the mind, but there are other functions of mind too.
Well, I was asking that because from listening to your lecture, you talk about what the Buddha said about attachment to thoughts and feelings, and that by being attached to thoughts, feelings, and perception, we get suffering. I'm getting quickly on the point. What I mean is, I had this feeling that consciousness was in a higher degree than thoughts, and thought was like an object, like a bubble or a sphere that goes around in the mind.
Yeah.
And that consciousness will reach out for these thoughts and build this mind.
Yeah. Yeah, you can say that, yes, in the Buddhist understanding of the five skandhas, thought or volitional formations, I think they're called samkaras, are distinct from consciousness. Yes. So the way I think of it is, consciousness is the light of the sky. The light of the daytime sky is consciousness. The clouds and objects and wind in the sky are thoughts or sensations and guided by perception. What the components of the sky, what's in the sky, are sensation, are basically perceptions, sensations, perceptions, and thoughts, volitional compounds. Those are the clouds of the sky and the wind in the sky and the forms of in the sky. The sky light itself, the light of sky itself, is consciousness. Now, there are many ways of looking at that too. You can even say that the light of the sky is consciousness, or consciousness is ultimately a pure manifestation. It's a distorted expression of the infinite awareness of the Logos, which is known to some extent by the mind of higher self. So consciousness, as we know it, the sky, or the light of the sky, the illumined sky, or the illumined, how about this? We can say that the mind is the sky, the light in the sky is consciousness. The source of the light in the sky is higher self. Higher self is beyond consciousness. Higher self is ultimately in the state of unity. In the state of unity, there are no five skandhas, or nobody believes the five skandhas are five skandhas. They believe that awareness, unified awareness, infinite awareness, can be broken down then into mind, body, spirit complex, can be broken down into what we call the five streams or five skandhas. So it's the infinite awareness of the Logos that is experienced somewhat by higher self, that is the light in the sky by which there is illumination or consciousness, awareness of the elements in the sky or in the mind, which are form, feeling, perception, and intellect or mental formations. Those are the elements or components that occur in the mind, that the mind may know. The mind may know form, it may know sensation in the body, it may know perception, its perceptual ability, and volitional formations or thoughts, fabrications, thought, memory, imagination. Those are the elements that can be perceived in mind by the light in the sky, which is consciousness, whose source is the sun or higher self, which is getting it ultimately from the infinite awareness of the Logos. So if you want to divide it, we can divide it. Otherwise, we don't have to divide it.
can would you say even that I'm not sure I think I don't understand everything you said, because I had a question about love and consciousness. Is love a form of consciousness? Well, is consciousness a form of love to some degree?
Yeah. You see, in an understanding of the three laws as one, we first can understand that the three are two instead of three. The three can be understood as a two and then as a one.
There's an extension of each other.
Yeah, well, we can. There's a sort of a splitting of what was previously unified. There's the capacity to distinguish components of a previously unified whole. So, the three, law of free will, law of love, law of light, can be understood as the law of free will love, or loving free will, and the law of light, or light energy. Now, if you want to understand, you see that light energy itself is vibration, is vibratory. Its vibratory nature could be understood as its consciousness, its sentience, its sensitivity to itself, to energy. That sentience, or vibratory quality of light, is ultimately the consciousness aspect of light. The essential quality of that consciousness aspect is will love. So you can say that the three laws are really two laws. There's love will, infinite love will, and then light energy, or vibratory light energy. In the vibratory light energy, there's still a twofold nature that can be determined. The three principles that can be understood as a dyad, as infinite love will and vibratory light energy. That dyadic twofold nature is also manifest in the nature of light, which is both energetic and consciousness, which is energy consciousness. Again, we can talk about chakras and we can talk about mind distortions. We can talk about chakra blockages and we talk about mind distortions. The chakra blockages are the energy aspect. The mind distortions are the consciousness aspect. The nature of consciousness is love. The fundamental nature of consciousness is the infinite love that gave rise to light. The vibratory, so the three laws are really a twofold infinite love will and vibratory light energy. Okay? That twofold is manifest in the nature of light itself, which is its nature being vibratory and also polarized vibratory. The polarity is basically reception transmission and wave and field. So, but if we talk about light, then, the nature of energy is light. We're not talking about light in the sky, we're just talking about a kind of mysterious quality of reflection. The nature of energy is light. That energy is also vibratory. And so you have energy that is vibratory. Its nature as light is combined with its nature as sentient. It's sentient light. The sentient aspect is the consciousness aspect, which actually comes down to free will love. The light aspect or the energy aspect is light. So the energy aspect is light. The consciousness aspect is love. So when you say love, light, love, all of light is light, love. Ross says there is not light, there's light, love. There's not just love, there's love, light. So all light is light, love, all love is love, light. So energy, being light, being an expression of light, is light, love. The love is the consciousness aspect. And that's ultimately the nature of consciousness, which is love or sentience. You can say that the free will aspect, you know, there are many ways of breaking this whole thing up. You can say that even before the law of light, when you just have free will and love, the free will is the energy light aspect, and the love is consciousness aspect. So the dyadic or dualistic nature of energy, being light vibratory and sentient vibratory consciousness, sentient consciousness and energetic, that is even expressed before you get to the law of light in the dyad of free will and love. Free will is the energy aspect, and the law of love is the vibratory consciousness aspect. So the nature of consciousness is love, and the quality of sentience of light is ultimately love. And that's an expression of the will of the Creator, which is light. So the law of free will, you can say, gave rise to light, love, and the law of love gave rise to love, light. So love, light, which is light, or light energy, being love, light, or light, love, is itself an expression of the primary duality or dyad of free will and infinite love.
So, I'll try to put that together. I was thinking about polarization and energy. You know, a lot of people talk about bad energy, good energy, but I have a feeling, even though sometimes I also use these words bad and good energy, but I have a feeling energy is not polarized. It's not one side or another. But so I would like to ask you: do you think it's through consciousness, through love, that energy is polarized?
Okay, well, you know, again, when we talk about is it polarized, we're really saying, tell me about your perception of polarity. What we call polarized from the level of higher self is not seen as polarized. Right? What we call energy consciousness or light love, energy consciousness is light love. What we call that pairing is really a unity. Meaning it's a unity that we're looking at in two ways, as a twofold polarity. So to call energy polarized is just a way of looking at energy.
Well,
energy is ultimately all polarized. However, that's a level of perception. Meaning, from the from the higher self level and below, from sixth density and below, we perceive energy as polarized. The dyad of polarized energy is basically the primary yin-yang, which is basically reception and transmission. In the same way of fourth chakra, fifth chakra. Fourth chakra is receptive, fifth chakra is transmissive, although it's also receptive, it has that function. But first there's the receptive of fourth ray, then there's the transmission of fifth ray. Those are the two qualities of energy seen as a polarity from the levels below higher self, which is basically the primary yin-yang, which is the primary magnetic and electrical, right? There's electromagnetic. The magnetic is receptive. The electrical is transmissive. So the magnetic is yin. The electrical is yang. So there's kinetic and potential. The potential is yin. The kinetic is yang. Receptive is yin. Transmissive is yang. Magnetic is yin. Electrical is yang. That dyad of polarity is the way energy is perceived below the level of higher self, Above the level of higher self, it's not seen like that.
So it's the being, it's the person that through consciousness, through its own consciousness, its own level of consciousness, attribute a polarity.
Yes.
To the energy.
Yes, you can say that. Yes. It's the nature of the observer that is determining what's being observed. It's the nature of the seer. The seer is basically seeing itself. Mm-hmm. Below the level of higher self, consciousness is not yet unified, or there's the belief in consciousness, which is distinct from energy, or it's love versus light. There's dual awareness, awareness of duality. At that level, actually, it's the third jhana in Buddhism. It's one of the last trances, which is the perception of infinite consciousness. The perception of infinite consciousness is a perception of unity. There's still, however, a belief or in the naming activity that's conceiving it as consciousness. Is perceiving the infinity of consciousness. It's perceiving unity. However, that perception is still based on the mistaken view of a self, a perceiver, using perception to have a perception of infinite consciousness, right? The knower, the known, and the means to knowledge. There's still some sense of a self with a particular perception of a particular object, which in this case is the infinity of consciousness or unity. Even that is considered a distortion or not yet complete and perfect enlightenment, meaning there's an attachment to the belief in unity. First there's the belief in duality, then there's the belief in unity. That's why Buddhism, true Buddhism, I'm not talking about later Mahayana, but the early forms of Buddhism, from the Pali Canon, doesn't really talk about unity. They don't talk about oneness, because the perception of oneness is considered simply another distorted perception, in this case related the counterpoint to the distorted perception of duality. First I perceive polarity, then I perceive non-polarity. What's beyond that? What's beyond that is infinity, or complete and perfect enlightenment, or the cessation of the belief in consciousness. And that's beyond higher self. So you can say that energy is polarized, sure, but that's the perception. That's non-dual perception. That's a perception of duality from a level below late sixth density. As you're pointing to, what is perceived is actually has more to do with the perceiver than an object. You see, all really is one. Okay, really it is true, all is one. That means that when I'm perceiving you, I'm perceiving me. Now, clearly your body and your stream of skandhas is different than the one here. Clearly. However, it's also one ocean of love-light. Now, to the extent that I don't know that really, just thinking about it, then I'm living dualistic perception. To the extent that I live the reality that I am the ocean, and yet I am the wave. I am the wave and I am the ocean. You are the wave and you are the ocean. To the extent that we live that now, then there is no separation. And there is no more polarity. There's no more experience of polarity of you and me. Likewise, considering light or vibratory field, the perception of it as energy and consciousness, or conscious energy, dissolves into a unified awareness that doesn't use the terms yin and yang, or electromagnetic, or vibratory, and field, or self and other. All of that doesn't happen at a higher level, and so the perceiver is always self-perceiving because there's only one of us here. that view. So yes, we can say that energy is polarized. That's the primary yin-yang. Walter Russell and those guys talked about that. So yes, you can say that. There's always that, and that's electromagnetic, and that's basically love, light, love. So love being the consciousness aspect, light being the energetic aspect. And again, we can talk about chakra blockages, nadi, energy meridian blockages, as the manifestation of mind distortions or conditions of mind. Therefore, we can say energy versus mind, or light versus love consciousness. But that duality, even though it's a useful polarity or a useful concept, and it helps us understand the world and the self and things like that, it dissolves into a greater awareness, understanding beyond higher self when there's realization of one unity.
So, we talked about thoughts and we talked about consciousness, and that's two different parts in the skandhas, but it's the same. Yeah,
they're two different threads in the stream.
Yeah, how would you qualify the mind there? Is the mind made from thoughts and consciousness?
Yes. The mind, I would say that, first of all, I didn't answer your question about good energy, bad energy, but I'll get back to that. I would basically go with the analogy that the sky is the mind, and within the sky are various contents. The contents are basically perceptions. What's being experienced is perception. Am I experiencing you, or am I experiencing my perception of you? Am I experiencing you with your qualities, or am I experiencing my perceptions of a you and of qualities I attribute to you, or that appear to be in you? I don't know. You can't really actually answer that. I would say that the sky is the mind, and what appears in the sky are the perceptions of form, perceptions of sensation, perceptions of thought and volitional compounds of imagination, and then ultimately perception of consciousness. But to perceive consciousness, you have to have a really quiet mind and very highly concentrated. That's a jhana. That's one of the trances. Then there's the perception of infinite consciousness. That's when there's really radical detachment from the contents in mind. Attachment to a material object, right? I'm attached to eating ice cream. This attachment is basically an attachment to the perceptions associated with that activity. It's an attachment to our beliefs surrounding that action, which are basically formed by our perceptions of what's occurring. So we're really experiencing our perceptions as a dual form of subject-object. It's perception that's dual, or it's perception that's limited, that gives rise to the appearance of subject-object and the 5 distinct skandhas, or distinction in the skandhas, or the stream. In terms of good and bad energy, you can say yes there is and no there isn't. Both. Yes there is, in that there are energetic distortion, energetic fields, or there are patterns of energy that are in greater harmony than others. There are conditions the condition of the 7th chakra in and of itself as a vortex is less distorted than the field of 2nd chakra. So you can say that's good energy, and the 2nd chakra is bad energy. But that's pretty childish. However, there is a distinction between the quality of violet and the quality of orange. In terms of structuring of that light, or harmony, internal harmony of the condition of that light or energy field. Violet represents less distortion than orange, 7 versus 2, right? However, if we label it good and bad, that's our human addition. However, again, you can say, so you can't call it good or bad, in that intrinsically neither is good or bad. Good and bad is the projection of a value system, right? I like what's good, I hate what's bad. What's good has more value and worth than what's bad. That's why it's called good. It's good to be rich, it's bad to be poor. Why is it good? What does good mean? Good means of higher value and worth. Bad means of lower value or worth. Can you say that the 7th chakra has higher value or worth than the 2nd chakra? Absolutely not. Can you say that this solar system has more value than another? This being has more value than another? Absolutely not. All is the one infinite creator. It's the same value. It's the same worth, worthy. Ra said, you are a being of infinite worth. Self is a being of infinite worth. Because the creator is a being of infinite nature. Its nature is infinite because that's what we are. That's all there is. There's nothing else here. Only the one infinite creator in myriad forms, with myriad forms of consciousness. None of it is good or bad. However, there is greater or lesser development. And there's greater or lesser distortion. And the 7th chakra is less distorted than the 2nd chakra. Meaning the conditions of that violet vortex are different than the conditions of the primary orange vortex of 2nd ray. But nobody is good or bad. But one is less distorted than the other. Likewise, there's a higher self and there's a cockroach. The condition of the mind of the higher self is far more developed than that of the cockroach. But you can't call them good or bad.
We could get...
However, you could call it good and bad if you want, meaning chakra blockages make trouble, lead to more suffering. And chakra clearance or clearance of blockage leads to less trouble and more joy, more happiness. So you can certainly say one is better than the other, but ontologically, essentially, no. But there's that which conduces to greater realization and that which retards or holds us back from greater realization. So there's more harmonious and less harmonious energy configuration. There's more helpful and less helpful states of mind. There's more accurate or less accurate metaphysics, right? Like the issue of free will. The idea that Earth is the only planet of free will, in my mind, is completely a mistake, completely wrong. Free will, as far as I know and I can see, is a universal principle, not only for this planet or solar system, but throughout the galaxies. So, that would be an example, I think, of wrong metaphysics. Is it bad? No. Is it less distorted, more distorted? Yeah, I think it's more distorted. But it's not bad. So, what's fundamentally good is that which helps ultimately help us go beyond the duality of good and bad. What's truly good conduces to non-dual consciousness, non-dual awareness. See, consciousness cannot be non-dual because consciousness is a constituent of mind, and therefore it's an identification less than unity. But the intrinsic awareness of unity or of creation itself is non-dual, meaning the self-reflective nature of light, the intrinsic infinite consciousness, the infinite love. See, at that point we're out of consciousness. We're just talking about infinite love awareness. The infinite vibratory sentience of light is non-dual awareness. Beyond consciousness, which is intrinsically dualistic, meaning it's based in a sense of subject-object. I'm conscious of that. I'm perceiving that. I, perception, and that. Subject-object and the means to knowing. Those three are unified in non-dual awareness, which is basically returning awareness to itself which is non-dual, which is non-separate, meaning there's no separate self. They're all, all is as is, and there's no limit to awareness because there's no identification with elements. There's just the light of the sky, and what's perceived is that light, which is non-dual, which is love light. But you're already starting to get beyond, back into the three principles on the other side of the Logos, or on the other side before creation. That's why it's called the path of return.